right, this is jpeg2RAW, show number 52, August 21st. And tonight we have a little scheduling change. We had Mitch Browner coming on. Mitch is, if you don't know Mitch, we'll try to reschedule him, but if you don't know Mitch, he is the Sony 2012 World Photographer of the Year. Just had a 10-page spread in National Geographic and takes some amazing, gorgeous storm photos. If you remember Mike Oblensky, who took the storm photos, Mike looked, this is one of his mentors, is Mitch Browner. Mitch Browner takes all of them black and white. Everything he does is in black and white. Mitch travels a lot to get these photos and is in the midst of traveling, was not able to get back in time. So he's not going to make the show tonight, but we'll have him on another time. And just want to mention that our Facebook group is still going strong. We have 382 people in there now. And I know Kathleen posts in there a lot. I post in there a lot. Tim comes in every now and then. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, head out in there. There's a lot of good discussion as the group grows and changes over time. We may do some things a little different over time. May even split the group up into different groups into like segmented little areas to have more control over the conversation. But we'll always probably keep this one big group in order to have an over. A main group for discussion is. On the other side, if you haven't liked our Facebook page, that's the best place to keep up with what's coming on with the show. And we're up to 1,824 there now, guys, and likes.
That's awesome.
Yep.
It's fun. It's kind of a wild group. It's fun.
It is. The other thing it's always shocking to me, we talk about this multiple times, is our Stitcher followers. So if you're looking on how can I get the show, rather than waiting for Mike to tell me it's published, how can I get it automatically on my phone or my desktop or wherever I want to get it? The easiest way is to subscribe to it, and you have a number of ways to subscribe. You can do it through iTunes, where we have 3 feeds, an audio and 2 videos, video large, video small. You can do it through YouTube. You can do it through, like I use BeyondPod on my phone, which is an Android app. I don't know if it's an iPhone app or a Windows Phone app or anything like that, but I know it's at least on the Android phone. I'm sure there's apps like that for the iPhone, or you just use iTunes.
On iPod, I think the best one that I've seen is Downcast.
Downcast, Dogcatcher, those are all ones. But the one that always gets me is Stitcher, and that is audio only. And of course, audio has, for whatever reason, always been our number one feed of the 3 feeds: audio, 2 videos. The audio has been our largest feed, and Stitcher just continues to grow. And a number of our Stitcher listeners have come over into our Facebook group and have been active members in there. So if you listen to us on Stitcher, go onto Facebook if you're on Facebook. If you're not one of the 3 people that are not on Facebook, come over to Facebook, search for jpeg2RAW, and join our group. You can like our page too, but join the group where all the discussion goes on. Now, with naked drink is, I don't know what that means in chat.
She's drinking a drink. It's called naked.
Okay.
And she says, how come I haven't heard about this earlier?
I was just distracted by the word naked. All this stuff going on in front of me.
Guys.
All this stuff going on in front of me. I see one word somewhere in all this thousands of words of text. Boom. But before we get into Kathleen's main subject here, I wanted to talk a little bit about what some decisions I've been going through on the next camera. And Kathleen knows, and I think I mentioned here before, I was really looking forward to the Nikon D800. Really looking forward to the D800. I right now have the Nikon D2x and D2H camera, and both of those are what they call crop sensor. And I don't know how much you're going to go into this, so if I start to overlap, Kathleen, just
no, you're good.
Okay, our crop sensor cameras, and I got something to show you what I mean by that. If I can find these, oops, not that one. So now I got to find out how to move on to the next image. A crop sensor. There you go. So what a crop sensor does is you've heard full frame versus crop sensor. The Nikon D2x, and they still sell crop sensor lenses, cameras now, and they sell what they call full frame. In Nikon terms, I don't know what Canon and Sony calls them. In Nikon's terms, they call it FX. FX for full frame, DX for a crop sensor.
We just call it crop sensor and full frame, as far as I know.
And to be honest, for a sports photographer, I do 2 main things: sports and landscape. and they have totally different needs. Sports, I love the crop sensor because one, you're using only the sweet spot of the lens. You know, you look at your sensor and it actually is a square or rectangle, where your lens is a circle. And what happens is with the crop, it's taking more of the center portion of the lens, as you can see in this example, and that is usually the best quality part of the lens. The edges is where the problems start to happen on the lens, especially your lower end lens. It also, it doesn't do like you would do necessarily in a after, you know, you take the shot, you bring it into Photoshop and you crop in, and that's kind of a way to zoom. It doesn't quite do that because it's actually taking all of this, the sensors, all the data from the camera, and putting it into that cropped area. So you're truly getting all the data inside of that, but it gives you a little bit more fake or effective reach, which is good for sports. The FX though, which is the wider frame, it means you do need to have better quality lens because those edges of the glass is where your weakness is going to be. Is better for landscape. So with the D800, which was a 36 plus 36.3 or something like that megapixel full frame camera, that is really nice for landscape. Then you can go. Then you can go into DX mode, and you can shoot at 15 megapixels.
They let you go. They let you choose which mode you want to use on the D800. You
actually have a 1.5 crop and a 1.2 crop, and maybe another one. I don't remember. But the 1.5 is normal crop sensor for a Nikon. There normally are 1.5. So my thought there was that kind of serves, kind of is both purposes.
Both purposes for what you shoot,
Yeah, I can do both. The downside that has happened with the D800 is they've had a lot of focusing issues. I don't know if y'all have heard about these, but they've been having, Nikon has been having some focusing issues, and I'm going to see if I can show you an example. Oh, here comes another example of FX versus DX.
Okay.
So that showing you the bigger box is the FX and the DX in the center. So you can see how much more frame an FX gives you versus a DX. It gives you more area. And here's an example of what taking a photo, an actual photo, applying that to a photo. You can see here, if you're taking this with a full frame, you get more of the image, where if you're taking it with a 1.5 crop, you get less of it.
It's cropped in.
That gives you that feel. So, I know what I'm looking at the wrong stuff. We need web page. Let's go to web page full, see if that'll work.
Okay. Nope, so you're talking about the focus issues is what you're going to show us.
Yes. Oh, here we go. Let's see. I don't know how y'all going to be able to, if you're going to be able to see this very well. But can you see the top one?
Oh, yeah.
So the top one is the center, using the center focus.
Okay.
The middle one is using the left, and the bottom one is using the right.
Wow.
So that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
You can see how
it's almost
bad,
unusable.
And Nikon is not releasing any kind of stats, so you don't know if this is
Have
like.
They owned up to the problem?
No, not officially.
Well,
They're not saying that this is affecting 1% or 5% or whatever. And of course, when you go online, you read about it. Only the people who are having problems are really going to post. But it's from what I'm hearing from some of the respected people in photography, like Tom Hogan and some of the other big names on the Nikon side, they're confirming, yep, I'm having problems too. So it's not just people you've never heard of who may just be, who you don't know if they're really having issues or whatever. If
they're doing it wrong,
Yeah, this is real people that you've heard of before.
Well, hopefully they can fix it with firmware.
Yeah, the fear is, I've heard of people who are sending it in, and it's not just the far left. It is as you go left in the sensor. So you look at your layout of all your focus points. The center one is good. As you go left, it gradually gets worse and worse and worse. And what's happened is some people have sent it in, and when they get it back, the left is good. Now the right's out. and they were having to send it in multiple times to get it, fixed. And I think that's probably the best examples that I had there. So anyway, I'm thinking, you know what? I probably should just forget that and go with a Nikon D700.
Mm-hmm. But no, you're going to go for the D4, or you're going to go for a D3S.
No, if I get the D3S for the same price as a D700, I would. But those things are still going for like $4,000. And
right.
So I think if you're somebody like me who's still on the DX format, most of my lenses are not DX, but I do have.
Now the D700 is a full-framed
It
camera,
is a full
right?
frame, yes.
Okay.
And let me see if I can.
But you don't have the option of doing crop sensor on that?
Or
do you have the option on the D700?
You do, but it's only 12 megapixels, so I don't have to worry about it. I can let it go, and shoot at the 12 megapixels. And also, here's the other thing. As I keep holding this lens here, I'll get to why I'm holding this lens in just a second. Even when you go to DX mode and you have the extra battery grip on the D800, you still are getting only 6 frames per second. So, but it is 6 frames per second, 15 megapixels. That's not too bad. The one thing with the D700 is you get full 12 megapixels, 12 plus, I think it's 12.1, and you get 8 frames per second. So it's not too bad. And of course it's more than $1,000 cheaper, or around $1,000 cheaper you can find it than you can a D800. So if you're like me and you're in a DX format, you're still in a crop sensor, and you're thinking about moving to a full frame sensor, the one thing you got to be careful of, like the lens I'm holding here, is my only one I have like this. It is a DX lens.
Only.
Yes. Well, it'll work on the on an FX camera, but when you put it on, it automatically goes to DX format.
Okay.
So in this case, let's say this is a 35 millimeter. I wanted to use it for landscape. I put it on a D700. The D700 automatically goes to crop mode, and on a D700, the crop mode is only 5 megapixels. So so it would not be something you want to do. You want, if you're on Nikon, and I don't know how this, you guys will have to tell me how it is for you guys, but if you're on Nikon, you really, you want to make sure your lenses are not DX. You want to make sure that they are. It won't say anything.
Full frame camera for full frame lens for a full frame camera.
It just won't say DX.
Right. Generally, it just won't say DX, and that way you know it. There, the thing with this one is I'll probably keep my D2x and use this lens on there. It's a good lens. It was only like $180. The full frame version of it was more than twice as much, so I have to get that over time. Which brings me to, if you're moving from DX to FX, your lenses are not going to work the same way. The 50 millimeter is going to be wider. My 70 to 200 won't have the same reach as I'm used to when I'm shooting sports.
Right.
I need, my wide angle lenses no longer will work the same way. So the other thought I had is, as Kaylee says out there, expensive.
Yes.
Is save the money now, get the D700, and then use that saved money to start building lenses under the full frame, format, and go that route.
I don't think it's a bad plan.
And I don't know, do you guys get the battery pack that goes on the bottom that give you vertical shutter?
I don't get it because
it doesn't fit my camera bag. I have enough problems getting in I'm looking to get another camera bag, which my wife says I have more camera bags than she has purses, but it won't fit in there then.
I think if I was shooting weddings, it would be important to me, but for what I do, I just like to keep my camera as light as possible. And
I can understand it. I'm used to having that vertical shutter, and one of the things when you do that on the D700, it takes you to that 8 frames per second. So that, as I'm looking at both D700, D800, I'm looking at the total price, and I would want the battery pack on both, the vertical grip, and also I really love. I don't know if you've ever used these Really Right stuff. Have you ever used any of their stuff?
No.
So I have their ball head for my tripod, but I also have an L bracket. It goes on the bottom the bottom and the side of your camera, and what that provides, if you're going to be putting your camera on a tripod, it provides both a a mount on the bottom and on the side of your camera for when you're at it. Side and, yeah. And so I buy those too. I like those. I had those on both my D2X, my D2H, and so I would have to get one of those. So all in price, I'd be saving over $1,000 by going with the D700. Plus, I could probably go a little bit longer without having to upgrade my computer, since I won't have to deal with 36 megapixel images.
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
So, Kat, you never heard of a vertical grip?
I've never tried one.
Oh, okay.
I've just never tried one. I've seen them before. They just make the camera look bulky and heavy to me, so I've never felt like I really needed one.
Well, the odd thing is like your D4, your D3S, my D2X, they all have it built in, and so it's part of the camera. When you buy one on the D800, D700, the add-on, it actually makes the camera even bigger than the full Pro version. It is slightly bigger. So yeah, you're definitely right. Adding that on there adds a lot of bulk.
Well, and I really prefer a landscape image if I can help it. I mean, I'll shoot a portrait image if I'm doing like senior photo shoots or something, or like a headshot, but I really prefer a landscape image. So I like framing them on my house, around my house better. I don't know. I just like it better.
I like it. So with that kind of leads somewhat into what you're talking about, the sensor size and all that.
Yes. So
oh, before we go to that, because I still have this up. Do you see what I have here?
Yeah. The baby.
Yes. So we hadn't decided how we're going to give this away yet. So I guess that's for us to talk about later. But now that we've given away the Drobo, and we need to get a report back from that person who won it and if he's using it. But now that we've given that away, it's on to the next thing. Just got to decide how we're going to do it and what we're going to require.
I think we should see how many people want to edit my photos for me, and then whoever says they'll edit the most for free gets it.
Wait, I don't know how that works out. We have to come up with something. We'll have to come up with something. All right, so now back to come back to you. So well, you're looking for that.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be a good win. I really wanted to talk about resolution and how it pertains to us as photographers. I've had a few photographers contact me, and did we lose Mike?
No.
Oh, there you are. I lost you for a minute. Asking me, my clients are asking me if my images are big enough to print at this amount of size. What should I tell them? I don't understand the whole resolution thing. So I thought it would be good for us to go in detail, because I think that it's common for us as photographers to kind of jump in and then kind of keep our fingers crossed, hoping that our images are the correct size, and hoping that they're coming out right, and not really knowing why they should be doing what they're doing as far as resolution is concerned. So to jump right in, resolution describes the detail that your image will hold. So a higher resolution number means that there is more detail within your image. And resolution can be defined in 3 ways. Sometimes people will talk about the width and the height as far as pixels are concerned, and that will be your resolution. Some people will talk about the total number of pixels within the picture, and some people will talk about how many pixels per inch there are. So basically, I made a little template here. Pixels are just dots in your image. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out left, right, higher, lower. There we go. Can you see that? Okay, so let's pretend that this piece of paper is a picture, and it's 5,616 pixels wide by 3,744 inches high. So the way you would determine the total pixels in this image is you would multiply the width times the height, which comes to 21 million. I can't read it backwards. Can you read that, Tim?
21,026,304.
Okay. Or you can shorten it down to 21 megapixels. So I was shooting with a 21 megapixel camera, which was the Canon 5D Mark II, and so that would be a common size that I would see on my screen when I would upload my images. So the way that they break that down into the resolution number that you see in Photoshop is if you were to take all the pixels in an image and, you know, count all the little dots, which are the pixels, then each image will have a certain number of dots per square inch. That's what DPI stands for. So, for example, an image this big that we just discussed would have 300 dots per square inch, or they would say pixels per square inch.
Wait, before you go any further, did you actually make 300 squares there?
No, are you kidding me?
Okay. Wow, you really did a lot of work.
You want to sit there and count them?
Sure, we counted. We trust you.
So basically, a 21 megapixel camera will obviously have more detail in their images than a 5 megapixel camera would. But we do need to be careful here because there's a common misconception. There is a difference between your file size and your image size. What we just talked about in reference to pixels and resolution is your image size. Your file size is measured in kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, and that's how much space your computer needs to have to store any file. A lot of people get confused the megabytes and the megapixels because a lot of times both of those terms are shortened down to just megas or megs, people will say. So just to be clear, bytes are just pieces of info within a file, and if you have 1,000 bytes, then that's a kilobyte. If you have 1,000 kilobytes, then that's a megabyte. If you have 1,000 megabytes, then that's a gigabyte, and if you have 1,000 gigabytes, that's a terabyte. I know that seems very elementary, but for people who just see the little letters off to the end, like I did for years, I didn't understand it until I looked it up and figured out what all that meant. So when you take a file and you reduce the size of the file, it's called compressing it. That's what we do when we choose to shoot in JPEG versus RAW. So basically, an uncompressed file is saved in a file format that doesn't, you know, compress the images down, which would be RAW. If you want to reduce your file size, which is the number of megabytes required to save the image, then you can choose to store your image in a JPEG file and choose the amount of compression you want before you save the image. JPEG compression analyzes the pixels in kind of blocks, and then will selectively reduce the detail within each block of image, which is why when you compress an image, it starts looking like little blocks, and people call it pixelated.
I think it's doing something where it averages out the data or something like that. That's why
that's what it does.
That's where you're actually throwing away data when you do JPEG.
Right. So, you know, by using a JPEG compression, you can keep the physical size of the image the same and reduce the amount of disk space required to store it, but obviously you're sacrificing the quality of the image. So that's important to keep in mind. Okay, I want to show you guys something, so I'm going to do a screen share here.
While you're doing that, it's something, somebody sent me a photo the other day, and it looked like the dimensions were normal, but when I pulled it, and the dimensions it looked like they were normal, because I said, send me a straight out of the camera photo. And they did, and the dimensions looked fine, but what didn't look fine was the fact that it was only 195 kilobytes. And it was, you know, that's, in this case, it happened to be something else, but you can, you know, keep your resolution high, but really compress it, and that will just really, with JPEG, you can really compress it and get a really small file size. But keep in mind, you're throwing away data, and like Kathleen just said, it'll eventually get to where it's blocky.
Right. Yeah, you'll be able to see it. I mean, even on your screen, you'll just be able to see it.
And can I step back 1 second, where you were saying the math, how you do, you know, width times height or something like that? Somebody was telling me they have an Android phone. This would be the same with iPhone. Is they said, man, the video that comes out of my camera is just awesome. I'm just going to start taking the stills. I'm just going to take stills from my video, and that'll be better than what the camera could take on that thing. And I said, no. you know, your camera on your phone is taking 8 megapixel images in this case, where
Right.
your video is HD, and you go, right, HD is more, and I said, no, HD is, was it 1092 by 1080?
I
So
think that sounds right.
if you
Yeah.
go 1092 times 1080, it's like 2 megapixels.
Right.
So
And
that's
so,
where,
and then also where the pixels of video are smaller, the megabytes and the size of a video file is much larger than an image.
and that's because it's storing 30 of those, generally 30 of
Right.
those images per second.
Right.
Like
Right.
right now in the broadcast we're doing, I'll look at it here. We're actually doing 25 frames per second, and that's why video is so takes up so much space, because it's taking 25 to 30 images per second.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so can you guys see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I have an image pulled up in Photoshop right now, and I just have the image size dialog box pulled up. I'm going to pull it back up so you guys can see how I did it. You just go to image and then drop down to image size. And this has all of your information for your image as far as pixel and document size goes. So the image size box is broken up into 2 sections. Obviously up top you have your pixel dimensions, and then down here you have your document size. And so your pixel dimensions, shows you your width and height as far as pixels is concerned. And once again, if you were to multiply these 2 numbers, it would work out that there's like 21, it was taken with like a 21 megapixel camera, or that you have 21 megapixels to count for. This number up here that says 120.3 M is misleading. That number is not simply the size of your megapixels. That's your megapixels, and it's also taking into account your bit rate and how many channels you're using.
I can see it here. People out in chat probably can't see it too well, but you can see she's pulled up a dialog box, and you can see generally where she's pointing. But in the Hangout we can see it. Okay. You there, Kathleen? Tim?
Yeah, I'm here.
I wonder if a Mac can handle.
I can barely see it on the Google Plus even.
Yeah. Girl, see the full screen. You can see it. Oh, if you switch to full screen display, you can see it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I just did.
I think we've lost Kathleen, so we'll have to just delay as we wait for Kathleen to reboot or do whatever she needs to do. What's odd is she's still displaying the image.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
I don't know how she's.
Oh,
well, there we go.
Why not?
As soon as I said that, we lost her.
Poof, gone.
Okay, so now as we wait for Kathleen to come back.
I'll tell you, I've always struggled with the whole image size versus what is needed for printing. I mean, I know I probably send too much to the printer, if anything.
Yeah, I generally try and keep mine at full resolution, and I'm not a big cropper, but I know sometimes you got to crop. And the thing I always struggle with, and I don't know if she's going to go on with this, but our cameras take photos in 8:12 format, not
Right.
8:10 format. So I was doing a photo shoot recently of the boys from our high school swim team that made it to the state competition, and they knew they wanted it in 8:10 format to go on a plaque. So what I had to do is make sure I left enough room that I could
On the
crop it.
sides, because that was going to get cut out.
Right, I had to make sure I left enough room on the sides to crop it that way, so I can, when I go from 8:12 down to 8:10. And it's just one of the things that you have to deal with. There is a setting, and I think the D800 and maybe some other cameras too, where you can actually shoot in that format. 8:10 is what, 4:5 format, I think.
Yeah, I guess 4:5 would be the right one. 8:10.
Yeah, but normally you shoot in 8:12.
And Kathleen just said she's working on it.
And if you're going to be just displaying stuff on the web or something like that, it's fine. Or if you're going to be putting it into a frame where you can do something with the framing and still using 8:12, that'll work too. You have to figure that out. Like you said, as far as how low can you go, yeah, I don't know, because I have taken. Well, if you ever seen that photo, that is, you can see a little.
Right, this your son up on the wall.
Let me see if I can get. I can't angle very well, but you can see the picture of my son that's up there. That is taken with a 4-megapixel camera, and it is a 20 by 30 image. So, you know, if you get up really close to it, you can probably see some of the pixels. I don't know, maybe not even you got up close, but definitely from a normal viewing angle, because the bigger the photo, the further away you're going to have to
Right, you're
be.
not going to be standing a foot and a half away from it.
You know, go stand up against a billboard. It's not going to be very good looking up close. So you know, you don't have to have that high dimension to shoot that. That 4-megapixel camera, they're just fine for that. Now, if the more you blow it up, the more you need to have a good starting image. You need, if anything that's wrong with it as far as sharpness goes, is going to be expanded as you grow, as you start to grow up, because it will lose sharpness as it tries to create additional data. With that one, it was fairly sharp to begin with. It was pretty good, and then, you know, a lot of it was you know, blurred out, which is fine too, and that it scaled up really good. I have a few more that I've blown up 20 by 30. I really like that size of 20 by 30. I've got to where if I'm going to print a photo, I want it to be big.
Well, the good thing about the new cameras is you can also crop then, because you have more data. With a 4-megabyte or megapixel camera, you're not going to be able to crop much.
Yeah, that's true. But even my Nikon D2x, which is only 12 megapixel, you know, it stands up pretty well to the bigger images. And somebody in chat just said they blew up an iPhone image to 20 by 30, and you know, that's an you know, I don't know which iPhone they use, but and they did it on Canvas. Canvas, there's certain formats you can print on that actually helps with the resizing. Canvas is one of those ones that's fairly forgiving as you start to blow it up and get bigger. Like your normal glossy is not going to be as forgiving, but something like Canvas and some of the other formats will be pretty good. And an iPhone, I think she says iPhone 4, I believe that's an 8-megapixel image. So, you know, that's not bad. You still would want that to start off at a good start. You want it to be a fairly sharp image and be pretty good. And generally from your phones, since they have a very big depth of field, you know, almost everything's in focus, you do generally get pretty good focus on those things. Is everyone else frozen too?
Do you need to send her another invite?
I can send her another invite. It sounds like she's fixing it. And Annabelle asked if everybody else is frozen. Is she not seeing us? Because I see us.
Well, I think we're moving on the screen, I think.
Yeah, I got this going. So Anna, if you're not getting this, I don't know, maybe it's something on your end. Anyway, the one thing with an iPhone or any of the phones that somebody brought up is the sensor size is extremely small. Went in this a little bit last week with Jim and those guys.
Right, it's like a fingernail size at best.
Yeah. So 8 megapixels versus 8 megapixels on that iPhone is not even equal to the 4 megapixels on my D2H. The D2H, I would take that over an iPhone for a number of reasons. One, even though it's 4 megapixels, the pixels are bigger. It's going to do better in lower light. It's going to give you better depth of field and all that kind of stuff. You lose depth of field with those smaller sensors. The small sensors, or on the other side, if you really want everything in focus, those smaller sensors do really well. You know what I'm talking about, Tim?
No, I agree. I think, like we talked about last week, your low light's going to suffer, your action shots are going to suffer. No doubt, even the iPhone and my Android phone, it takes that split second between the time you press take a picture, or even it's well more than a split second. Anything you wanted to take is probably missing already. Mm-hmm. Anything that's quick, unless you're taking a static picture. If you're taking a static picture of a group of friends or something, you know, your iPhone is probably a great camera.
You know, I think the cameras inside phones are getting better and better for snapshots, and you know, even for some artistic stuff. Every now and then, they're not going to compete against an SLR with, you know, good quality glass and that kind of stuff. But you know, like we've said before, you know, the best camera is the camera you got with you, and generally you have your phone with you. I know I was heading up the stairs the other night, and I always check on even though my boys are a junior in high school and 8th grade and middle school, I'd still check on them in their beds as I go to sleep. So I'm coming upstairs, and my younger one is sleeping, He's dead asleep, but he's got his legs up in the air with one of them crossed over the other one. Like, I'm older than probably some of the people who are listening here, but I got to imagine most of us, if we slept like that, we'd be so sore the next morning we couldn't move. So I whipped out the camera phone and took a picture of him like that. And even in the darkness, it focused fairly well. And then, of course, it flashed to flash. And I was surprised at how well it came out. The only thing is my phone is hooked up to Google, so within a couple of minutes after taking a photo, I get a bleep that my photo has just been uploaded to Google+. I do have sharing turned off, so it doesn't auto go into my feed, because he probably would not be too happy about it auto going into the feed.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked about probably a couple of months ago now, and I think Kathleen had brought it up when she went on a cruise, that people are taking these pictures that are horrible, and you know, a lot of people are not like us, where we look to have a great picture. They're not discriminating. They accept a lot, and there are a lot of people that are more than happy to take a picture from their camera phone, whether or not it's even an iPhone, which has got a good camera in it. I mean, I think about my old Droid X, which had a terrible camera in there, and a lot of my friends are like, no, it's good pictures. I'm like, oh my God, I'm disgusted by it, but a lot of people are more than happy with that. And I mean, you think about people with disposable cameras and everything, and you're not getting a good picture by that, but they were happy with them.
Well, let me ask you all this before we get back to Kathleen, if you don't mind, Kat.
Oh, you're fine.
And I wonder how many, if it affects you guys or if it affects anybody out in chat. And that is, you know, as I got more and more into my SLR, my digital SLR, I really no longer wanted to take snapshots. I wanted all my images to have that real shallow depth of field. I wanted every one of them. They didn't all turn out this way, but I wanted to try and make every one of them to be a great shot. So my wife says, "Hey, come take pictures of Andrew's birthday party. You know, he's going to blow out the candles." Like, where's the art in that? I can't. You know, so I'll be wanting to focus on the candle and getting it, you know, it in focus and darkness around it and doing all this kind of stuff. And she would look at the images afterwards. You can't even see him. What's going on here? And I said, I don't want to take snapshots anymore. But what I think the camera phone has done for me now is, you know, I could care less. I'm going to take those snapshots with the camera phone that I wouldn't necessarily want to break out the SLR for. Does anybody else have that feeling where you don't want to take snapshots?
I totally do. I mean, just the other day, it was my son's first baseball practice, and he looked so cute in his little uniform. And so I initially went to grab my phone and then felt guilty about using my phone at such an important, like, time in his life. And so then I went and got my camera, but then of course I was just like, all right, hold on, white balance, okay, now we got to make sure that we're on RAW, okay, hold on, do I want this, you know, a thirds, or do I want him centered? And by the time, like, my son's, like, you know, out the door, like, yeah, whatever, Mom, I'm going to baseball practice. So you got to be quick, but then you also fight it because you're just like, oh, that's not as shallow as I wanted the depth of field, or let's take 15 more.
No, I think I'm going to always grab my camera before I grab unless I don't have my camera with me, I'm going to grab my SLR. And today I went into the city with Jack. I'm on vacation this week, and I went into the city with Jack to a spy exhibit in Times Square. And I could have easily taken my wife's point and shoot, or I could have used my camera phone. No, I took my camera, and I'm glad I did, because when I got there, they said no flash photography. They had a lot of limits. So if I wouldn't have had my camera, I wouldn't have gotten any pictures inside there.
Yeah.
Well, Kathleen, now we got you back. You want to, I don't know if you remember where you were, but you had an image pulled up and you had the dimensions. We couldn't see them too well in chat because, you know, obviously the chat window.
We're guessing that your Mac could not handle the extra job of screen sharing.
Actually, my plugin for Google Plus failed, so I had to uninstall it and reinstall it. It was very odd.
Then you did very well to get back in as fast as you did.
Thanks. I've got the commercial running. I'm going to mute it.
Oh, you're just not coming back into the live chat? But you were showing us that, and Tim and I went on and talked about cropping, you know, shooting at 8x12 versus 8x10, and what dimensions you would need for, you know, what dimensions you need for certain size prints. And I was saying that print that is right there, I don't know if y'all can see that. That print that's right there is a 20x30 taken with a 4 megapixel camera.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I kind of heard you guys talking about that. And, you know, the question that we always ask ourselves as photographers is how large can I print this and have it still look good? Like, what are the rules? And basically, you know, as the size of your document goes up, the pixels that you have get spread out over that document. So basically, the real question we should be asking ourselves is how far can we spread these pixels and still have them look good? Because they're not disappearing, they're just being spread way out. And so really there are three things that determine what looks good. Number one is, what are you printing on? So, you know, if you're printing on your home printer, it's going to be different than sending it to a professional printing company. And a lot of professional printing companies, you just ask them, they'll probably be telling you anyways, but ask them what is their optimal resolution. Industry standards is usually about 300 pixels for like an 18 by 12. So if that's your starting point, if you're looking at an 18 by 12 like document size and you've got 300 pixels or so, then when you go up, obviously the resolution is going to go down, but if that was your starting point, you should probably be pretty good to go. Number two is your subject matter. Like, it depends on what you're photographing. If you're taking pictures of the sky, there's a lot less detail in the sky than there is if you're taking pictures of like a colorful bird. So you could probably blow the image up of the sky larger before you would see any kind of pixelation. And then the third thing really is just a matter of taste. Like, one image might look fine to me, and to Mike, he might say, no, it looks too pixelated for my taste. And so all three things kind of take into account. And really the best way is to get some of your own images printed and find what looks acceptable to you. And to kind of also know what your professional printing companies' standards are for prints.
What about viewing distance?
Yeah, that makes a big difference, because like on a billboard, if it's pixelated, you're looking at it for 3 seconds as you drive by, and you're looking at it up at an angle. So that's not going to be as big of a deal as if you're hanging a portrait in your family room for artwork. That's when you're going to be sitting there studying the piece of artwork and not want it to look pixelated.
Plus, you know, the distance that you're viewing that billboard from is so far away, you don't see those pixels. And I haven't done this with a LCD, so maybe Tim, you can help me here. But I knew with the old picture tube TVs, when you're back sitting on your couch, the image looked fine. But if you ever got close up to that image, you could literally see the red, green, and blue pixel in that TV.
And all the lines, absolutely.
And all the lines. You were never meant to be that close to it. You know, now with a photo that's hanging on your wall, you may not be meant to view it at 20 by 30 from, you know, 6 inches, but somebody still may do that. And you know, you got to decide whether somebody viewing it that close can see the pixels, if that's going to bother you or not. This one that I have up here is, you can view it pretty close and it still looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think about you blowing it up? Let's say you bring it into Photoshop, you resize it, versus sending it to somebody like White House Custom Color or whoever your printer is, and letting them do the resizing.
I let my printer do it just because they're professionals. If there's a specific size, okay, so for example, like an 8 by 10, there's going to be some cropping there, and so I will size that because I want to be able to be in control of where the crop's going to go on the image. But if it's a size that's not going to have any cropping, then I'll just send it to them and let them do it.
I do the same thing, yeah.
And they're fine with that.
Mm-hmm. I do whatever cropping I need to do, I do, and then other than that, I'll let them resize it. My theory, and I haven't fully tested this, my theory is that, you know, they deal with this every day. They know what they're doing. They've got
they know it's going to look good.
Yeah, they know it's going to look good. And if they send me something that looks like crap, they know that I'm probably going to send it back and say reprint it. And they have a vested interest in it coming out pretty good. So that's why I generally let them resize it. Just like you, if they don't have to crop, then I let them do it.
Yeah, that's what I do too. And then the whole resampling thing can get kind of confusing, but basically what that is, since we have time to talk about it, is basically what that is either using, manipulating the pixels within the camera and either adding pixels to it or taking it away. So obviously If you're going to try and make the image size much, much, much larger than required and you have very little pixels in there, you might want to, I think it's called upsampling. The image is where you add pixels to the image, and basically what they're doing is they're making up pixels, and it's kind of like created them out of thin air in a way, except for there's a couple way that they can do it. I think is it called binary or what is it called? Hold on, I gotta look at my screen.
Bicubic.
Okay,
maybe?
yeah. So you can either do nearest neighbor, which basically is just trying to match the pixel that's closest to it, which is not very good because it ends up coming out very pixelated. Then there's bilinear. There's bicubic, which is good for the smooth gradients all the way across. Then you have bicubic smoother, which is best if you're trying to enlarge your image, and then bicubic sharper, which is if you're trying to reduce your image. So the reason you would want to resample for reduction is for website usage or just looking at on your computer. The reason that you would want to make it larger is if you want to try and add pixels to your image for an enlargement for print, but obviously it's not going to be as good as if the pixels were just already there, because if you're creating something out of thin air, it's not going to ever be as good as what was originally caught in camera.
Right.
So that's basically what resampling is.
Okay. What else? Do you have anything else? Want to open up the chat?
Yeah, let's do it. Is there any questions out in chat?
We've gone almost. We don't have to go the full hour, but we've gone close to it already.
It says.
Any questions out in chat?
I'm trying to read back to see if
It looks like they were
anything
trying
that
to
we
find
missed.
some photo houses to print.
Yeah, and I don't. I've used like Sam's Club locally. I've used that. I've used online. I generally use White House Custom Color if I'm going to do that. I've heard Miller's Lab is good too. MPix.
I use White House Custom Color for my prints, and I use Miller's Lab for my albums. And it's not, neither one of them is based on one product being superior to the other. They both have really nice work, but I have found that White House Custom Color prices their prints better, and Miller's Lab prices their albums better.
Okay. And one of the questions was when you export out of Lightroom, what DPI should I use? And I think I generally use the 300, like she's mentioning there.
Yeah, that's what I use too, is 300.
Yeah. I generally use 300.
Jen Albrecht, Kat, I came in a few minutes late and I missed a lot of the good stuff. Can you do these things in Lightroom or Photoshop only? Jen, are you talking about resizing your image?
That's a good question. So can you go beyond 300 DPI for printers? I'm sure that you can for some printers. I don't know if that's for every printer. Scott wants to know how you like your new camera. Who is Rose City Photos? Do they know Scott Green somehow? And they're asking, Scott wants to know how you like your...
I don't know.
How do you like your new camera? Why don't we talk about that while we're waiting for questions?
Well, let's answer Jen Albrecht's question.
Okay.
She wants to know if we can resize images in Lightroom. You want to answer that one?
I believe we can.
I'm trying to pull up Lightroom now. I'll see if I can.
I've always just done it in Photoshop.
I don't know if
But I guess if you don't have Photoshop, what would you do? Right?
The thing about Lightroom is it's non-destructive. Everything that happens in Lightroom is non-destructive. I'm not sure.
And if you resize an image, that's kind of destructive to the image.
You can crop it, and it's really what's happening with a crop is it's not truly cropping the original. So I know when you go to export it, you can.
That's where I've always done it.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. When you go to export it, you absolutely can resize it. I was thinking of resizing it in a develop module.
Oh, right, yeah. Me too. That's what I was thinking of.
That's
but
exactly.
yes,
I found a
export,
website on that.
And so
upon export, you can resize. Yes.
Absolutely. So when you go there, you can actually tell it there in resizing, what you want the maximum height or width to be, and then you can say what the pixel resolution you want it to be. You can also say don't enlarge. So sometimes I'm wanting all of mine to come out 1200 by 1200, meaning the biggest side would be 1200. And I always say don't enlarge if something happened and I took something that was below 1200 somewhere, I wouldn't want it to enlarge and go up. But yeah, that's part of the export profile.
I put a link in the chat for it. There was a website on how to do it, which shows exactly what we were talking about, doing it through the export process.
Yeah, I can try and share my screen here and see if it works without making me crash like Kathleen did.
Well, you don't have a Mac.
Hey, don't go jinxing me.
Keep it up.
Don't go jinxing me, Tim. I got a lot going on with this computer here, and it could end up crashing me. What? Okay, it didn't even want a screen share. You know what? It screen shares, but it won't show the dialog boxes.
I think we had that happen once before.
Yeah, so I can screen share, but it's not going to be of any use because we won't show the dialog box. And somebody's asking about Lightroom 4. Yeah, Lightroom 3, I've only used 3 and 4, but both of them allow you to resize on export.
I think it's the same dialogue on both of them. I don't think they changed it.
And this is the common question I also see a lot of people is, how do you resize for Facebook? Do you have any magic there, Kathleen, for how you resize for Facebook?
I'm going to have to look it up because I don't know off the top of my head. If I do it in Photoshop, I created an action and it just resizes it down to the Facebook width and height that's, acceptable. And then I will run a sharpener on a separate layer, but most of the time I turn it off. I know a lot of people sharpen their images again for Facebook, but I just haven't really seen a need to. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, here's one of the keys. Make sure you're converting the image back to sRGB.
I always keep mine are kept in sRGB, so that's never been an issue for me, but yes.
Oh, okay. I shoot in Adobe RGB. And then when I edit in ProPhoto RGB, and that gives you the widest color gamut. You're dealing with all the colors. sRGB is a very limited number of colors.
Okay.
But you want to make sure if you're not going to edit in sRGB, that when you go to output it, you're outputting an sRGB image, because nothing you see on the web will look right unless it's in sRGB.
Correct, because all the colors are meant for that.
Yeah.
Now,
so what is the one that you said had the largest photo gamut is what is it called?
It's ProPhoto, and then your camera probably cannot shoot in that, although RAW it will give you everything. You want to shoot in Adobe RGB when you're shooting on your camera.
Why is that?
Because it's the widest gamut that your camera can take. If you're shooting in JPEG, if you're shooting in RAW, it's going to get everything.
So you shoot in Adobe RGB, you import into ProPhoto,
yeah,
and then you export into sRGB.
Yep, you edit in ProPhoto. Now, you're going to come back to me later and say, Mike, I do not see any difference. The differences here are very subtle. So you would have to have a good example between two images, maybe some bright reds or something like that. And really pay attention. I don't think it's going to be like a night and day thing. If you output a ProPhoto or Adobe RGB file onto the web, the colors may look a little muted versus a normal sRGB. So you do want to make sure you're converting that. But I think some of the issues with Facebook is getting it to the right size. And
somebody on our page the other day uploaded an enormous image, and when I clicked on it, it popped up and it filled my screen, and it was beautiful.
I don't know.
I can't remember who it was.
What about using, like in Lightroom, one of the published services for Facebook? Have you used that, Mike?
Oh, I use that all the time. I use that when
I mean, that should automatically set it up correctly for Facebook, I would think.
I can't get that working on mine for the life of me.
You would think it would work. It would work and do the proper settings, but I'm not so sure that is the case, because Adobe did not make that plugin. That's the third party that made that plugin, and maybe when they made it, it was the right dimensions. I don't know if it stays that way. And and
Facebook changes their dimensions a lot of times.
Yeah, and there may be something in that you can change. But when I go and shoot a swim meet or something, I will
Yeah.
post the photos straight to a Lightroom, to a Facebook album from Lightroom,
Yeah.
and you know, then parents can go and see that and all that.
Yeah. I don't really feel like we're giving people a really great answer as to what are you supposed to do to make them look good on Facebook, because
We
I
don't know.
honestly, well, and I haven't ever had any problems, so I don't know. I don't know what people are doing to make their images not look good. Does that make
Who,
sense?
yeah, who asked that question? Uh,
Was it Amber? Anna Bartel.
yeah,
Okay, so right now my export for Facebook on Lightroom resizes my images 950. And I just do width and height the same number. So basically it will, take into consideration whether it's a vertical or horizontal. And I have don't enlarge checked, and I have 300 resolution pixels per square inch. So that's what I have.
I think
And my
here's,
quality, it's JPEG, and my quality is at 100%.
I think one of the things that I would suggest, Anna, is to go in a Facebook group and ask that questionnaire. Let's get a conversation going over there in the Facebook group, and maybe some people have an answer that can help you out, and to help the rest of us out too, and maybe help some people who aren't listening. But that's a good question to carry on there, because I'm sure some people have their own magic in how they do that.
Right. So my new camera's pretty awesome. I've only officially used it on one official photo shoot. Of course, I've been using it around the house on my kids and such, but I've only had
Nikon,
one
right?
session since I got it. Yeah.
It's a Nikon.
It's a Nikon that's called Canon. It's the 5D Mark III, and the focus is significantly better on this camera, which is, of course, no shock because the Mark II only has one cross type focus point, and this one has like a gazillion cross type focus points, and it even has some double cross type focus points, which I had never heard of before, which is really super.
What does that mean? Explain that.
I don't
A vertical
really know,
and a
but it
horizontal.
says it.
It's a cross type.
I think it's like this.
Usually you only have like them in the
like
center.
this.
Usually they're only like in the center, but I think it's even diagonal.
Wait, so that's what I was confused about, because the cross type is
because the cross type is like this. So I think it's like this. I should get
Like
my
a
manual
star?
out and be sure before I say. But it's got the picture of which ones are doubles cross type, which ones are cross type, and which ones are single. So hold on, I'm looking.
the double cross type is what I was asking about, Tim, because I have heard of, Nikons have, of course, cross type,
Right.
and some of the bigger ones have multiple cross types.
Multiple cross.
But double cross is not something I've heard. That sounds like
Double cross.
that's
I'm telling you.
that sounds like a Canon thing. You've been double crossed.
It says dual cross type focusing. So I don't know if you guys can see this in my manual. Hold up. Hold on, I need to see my screen.
That's well, I don't think
This
we're
is
ever
going to be a
gonna
tough
read
one. Okay, can you?
No, it's not focusing on it.
No.
No,
It's
nothing.
very pixelated on my screen.
Oh, jeez. Does that mean I'm going to have to scan this and post it to the Facebook page?
No,
You can probably find it on the internet.
If you keep talking,
Okay.
I'll find something.
Okay, it says the autofocus sensor has 61 autofocus points. The illustration below shows the autofocus sensor pattern corresponding to each autofocus point. With an f2.8 or larger maximum aperture lens, high precision autofocus is possible at the viewfinder center. Depending upon the lens attached to your camera, the number of usable autofocus points and autofocus pattern will differ. For details, see each lens, and it's listed. But basically, the diagram shows how it has cross-type focusing and dual cross-type focusing. And then it has just vertical and just horizontal. So when it shows the dual, it says the focusing sensor is geared to obtain higher precision focusing with 2.8 or larger maximum aperture lenses. A diagonal cross pattern makes it easier to focus subjects that may be difficult to focus. It covers the 5 vertical autofocus points at the center. So it looks like the cross type are like this, and the dual cross type are like this.
All right, here we go.
That's what it looks like.
How's this?
You got it?
So I don't know how well y'all can see that. I can zoom in a little bit if we need to zoom in.
No, you can see it.
Yeah, so forget that part, but the orange ones or whatever color that is, these out here, and
those are cross type.
Those are cross. So these ones that going down the center are your double cross.
Right.
So they're secret agents. Double secret
cross.
agents.
They're double cross. And speaking of double cross, we have.
Yes, I see Mr. Jim in chat, and I am very sorry that I wrongly accused you of calling me a lady in quotes because you didn't use quotes. I saw the video.
I love that. I love that little pre-video. That was great.
It was great.
So now we have.
I think he set the bar very high for us, Mike.
What's that? What's Jim? I mean, Tim.
I think the way he set up that minute and a half pre-video set the bar very high for us. Yeah, he's got the YouTube link up there.
That's pretty good.
I almost fell out of my chair watching it.
When you say us, you mean me.
Well, all right, so you.
Yes, I know. I need to get to work on a better intro and exit and all that stuff.
Kyle's watching it now.
But
stay with us, Kyle.
I figured that we. Yeah, speaking of that, I found Jackie over in Jim did his show tonight, and I actually have it up on another screen myself. And who did I find over there chatting over there? Is Jackie.
Hey,
Jackie.
Hey. Jackie's also out here and
talking about double cross.
But I wanted to get that into the actual show in this week is that Jim did not say lady.
He did not.
And I didn't remember him saying it when you called him out, but I was more than willing to jump on that bandwagon and go after him.
Bury him. It was too much fun.
Obviously, I'm just gonna go wherever the crowd goes, and that's the crowd was going to crucify Jim, and I wanted to go that way.
Let's do it.
And that as we're wrapping the show up, that show was a good show. It is back to the basics. Tonight was kind of a back to the basics show too. We want to do these every now and then. We had a scheduled night next week of no guest, and we were going to do the show next week because we want to every once in a while go back to the basics. Our guest tonight couldn't make it, so we're going to see if we can move him to next week. If not, we'll have to come up with some other thing. But the show we did last week on Jim's show was a real back to the basics show. Really good. I've got some feedback since then. I think I shared it with you two guys on a listener who really enjoyed the show because of the back to the basics. And eventually we may just start up a whole new podcast if I can ever find enough time. That is always a basic show, but we have to find the time. And speaking of time, we're past the hour. Kathleen, why don't you tell us where people can find you?
You can go to www.KathleenBowiePhotography.com, and Kathleen is with a K, and Bowie is spelled just like David Bowie. And then on Facebook, you can just search for Kathleen Bowie Photography.
Okay. And you can also get a hold of me and Tim and Kathleen if you wanted to through the show, podcast at jpeg2RAW.com. You can find all three of us on Facebook and our Facebook page and our Facebook group, which just search for jpeg2RAW.com. Tim, do you have any place other than that you'd like people to contact you?
That's probably the easiest way to get me.
The show is also on Twitter. We tweet out every once in a while. I don't know if either one of you guys do anything with Twitter, but I'm on Twitter there through the show, and I got it kind of pulled up there, TweetDeck. I don't know if you ever used that. A lot of noise going on there. But the show is every week. We'll be back next week with either a guest or by ourselves, and then we're starting to book the fall season. Kathleen has some exciting guests. She's back in the hunt. She is booking guests right now. If you look at just the fall season, Kathleen is beating me, and maybe that's
buddy.
Maybe that's what we need to do. I've got so far out in front of you, it's just uncatchable. So
We'll break it out into seasons. Thank you.
That's what we need to do is just do seasons. And right now,
All I'm saying is you wait till my kids are in high school. You just wait.
and well, to make it fair, you're gonna have to have a job that takes up like 60+ hours a week.
Motherhood, hello.
Yeah, but if your kid's in high school, what is there then?
Don't. You're dig yourself out right now.
But so Kathleen has some great guests that she's lined up. We've got September 4th, I believe, which is week after next. We got Ryan Brenhauser. I have to pronounce his name before then. He has a whole photo technique that he does that is named after him. Have you seen that, Kathleen or Tim?
Yeah, it's awesome.
He is taking very shallow depth of field photos. And then one case he just did one with 70 images, shallow depth of field images, that he then blends all together to create a different depth of field. It really, really is amazing. He's going to be on in 2 weeks to talk about that. And so we have a lot of shows coming up for the fall season. We also have the new giveaway that we're going to be doing soon, so be looking for that. And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
Good night, guys.
everybody.
Thanks for coming.